Hello everybody, today we're here with Steve Anderson, owner at Hawkeye Title and Settlement. How are you, Steve?
I'm doing great. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Today we're talking about some really interesting things. For example, abstracting. What is an abstract? What's a deed? What's a title opinion? So Steve, I get this question all the time. What is an abstract?
Well, every transaction, there are lots of different aspects of it. And when we get closer to closing, one of the big things that buyers want to know, as well as realtors and sellers, and particularly banks, is whether title is clean. And whether, in other words, if person A is going to sell to person B and the bank want to know that person A has true title to the property and that they can transfer to the next person without any problems. So what we do is examine an abstracted title. This is an example of an abstracted title, just because it's nice to see something physically. This is pretty much my life, in that I read through these things, sometimes 20, 30, 40 a day. And what this is the history of any particular piece of property, literally back from sometimes when Iowa became a state. Mm-hmm. So if you think about it, you take a piece of property that's this huge, and it's the state of Iowa, and it just keeps getting smaller and smaller and subdivided, and then it's a city and it's a town, and then within that town there becomes subdivisions and neighborhoods, and then it gets down to the point where every piece of property that gets sold in the state of Iowa has one of these. This example that I've got in front of me is a condominium, and so it's even a smaller piece of property. And what it does is it takes and it traces that history of that piece of property literally back from the beginning of the state. Now, we have some rules where if we create an abstract today, we don't have to quite go back to 1846 or 1820 or whenever it is. But you have to. The first entry in this abstract is what's called a patent from the United States to a William B. Snyder, who was a developer back then, and it's from 1841. And then the latest is an abstract that's updated all the way up till about, I'd say, 30 days or so before a real estate closing. Mm-hmm. So what happens is, if we have a seller getting ready to sell a property, if you're representing a seller, one of the things, when all contingencies are satisfied, financing's approved and inspections and all stuff, one of the final things you're going to do is hire an attorney like me, and have an abstract company like Hawkeye Title update an abstract, deliver it to the attorney, and then I examine that abstract. And what I produce from examining that abstract is called a title opinion. Mm-hmm. And we have a couple of different ways of doing it. Sometimes you do what's called a preliminary title opinion. Sometimes, depending on what kind of financing you get, it's called a preliminary title commitment. Mm-hmm. And what that is Steve's opinion, after looking through this whole abstract, that yes, in fact, the seller does own the property. And then we also have things we need to know. We need to know, is that seller married or are they not married? Because if they're married, a spouse has to sign off. Or if they were married, are they divorced? Did they have kids? The reason that's important is because one of the big things we're trying to determine is, are there liens that the seller has? Whenever you have someone that, let's say somebody sues you and they get a judgment against you, that lien or judgment attaches to everything you own, including your property. So one of the things we've determined as a policy is that it's important to help people collect their judgments. So if I was married and I got divorced and I had child support, that would be a lien against me, and I can't sell my house until I've paid all the liens that are attached to this property, because we want title to be clean for the new buyer.
Right.
They want you to have your own things. And then the other things you're thinking about are there mortgages against the property? Most people are going to get a mortgage from a bank in order to borrow money to pay for the property and then pay it back over time. We want to make sure that if there's mortgages and that we pay them off, and we get releases for those, so those don't attach to the property, probably replaced with another mortgage that the buyer's going to get.
Right.
Taxes, we want to know that the property taxes are paid or up to date. Are there special assessments against the property for any particular reason, which are just another example of kind of a lien that you want to make sure that a buyer wants to get clean title to a property, and the attorney and the realtor and the banker all want that too. The banker wants it because the bank has to think, are we making a good loan? You probably have talked about appraisals. You know, the bank's going to want to make sure the property's worth what it's worth, but they need to then know that they're going to get good title, because what's the bank going to do if for some reason things don't go well and they have to foreclose on the property? The bank wants to know that not only that we know we've got a lien from our person, but there are 6 people prior to the property that owned it that have liens against the property as well, because they might not be able to foreclose.
Right.
Taxes. This is a condominium, for example. There's a condominium declaration that sets forth all the rules and regulations about where you live and what you can do and what you can't in your condominium. Covenants are another thing which is similar to condominium declaration, but for residential single-family homes, where you have a neighborhood and it says what kind of house you can have. Zoning. We want to make sure there's zoning that this is. You know, so you want to know as a consumer that someone can't build a Quick Trip right next to your house in your neighborhood. And that's what the zoning does. That's the city saying what's going on and making the rules for what can be in certain neighborhoods. And then we just want to know, are there easements, for example? Can the county come in or the city come in and dig up your front yard if there's a leak in the water main or something like that? And so they would have not liens, but they would have the right to do that, and the owner would have to know that they have that right. So if they did, hey, why are you on my property? That's kind of the gist of it. Anything that can affect your ability to own this property free and clear ultimately is what's in an abstract.
Okay, so what's the difference between, so title opinion you're reviewing, what we just went over, what is abstracting? When a seller or when a buyer hears the abstract is in abstracting,
getting
what does
abstracted. So it's one of the other parties. Where, you know, our abstract company is called Hawkeye Title, and we have the other half of my office, complete side of my office. Their job is, we have what's called a title plant. And a title plant, that's really what Hawkeye Title is. It's a title plant, and what that means is, it's an easy way to say it is it's a big, huge database. And what it does is track literally every piece of property. Any document, lien, filing, anything in Johnson County, Iowa, that is filed on every piece of property we know about and we have put into our database. So in other words, we have approximately two people in our office that do nothing but constantly update our title plan. So every day we are in contact with the county for the recorder's office, the auditor's office, the clerk's office, and so we search all of the public records, get information, and then we take it and install it into our title plan. So we know when we're looking at this unit in this condominium exactly what's going on with this piece of property. So they produce then these abstracts. And this is what goes to the next step in the line, which is to the attorney who examines what's produced. And so that's what it means when we're saying in the abstract. So it's a big job, really, and it's a lot of record keeping and a lot of, but it's a critical part of what this does. In Iowa, we're a little different. We have what are called abstracts of title. The truth of the matter, as much as sometimes we talk about being different in Iowa, it's not that different, because every state, every bank isn't gonna or can't put a mortgage on a property with no knowing what the status of the title is.
Sure.
So it just happens that in Iowa we have title plants and abstract companies that actually examine and keep track of all that stuff to put all that stuff together.
Understood. The other common question that I get a lot as a real estate agent is, what is a deed?
Okay. A deed, and there's several kinds of deeds. As a general rule, most folks, when they buy a piece of property, the deed is the actual document that is truly being signed and executed and placed of record that transfers title from me to you. So the deed is the actual document. Some people get confused. What's a deed? They'll say, I got my deed, it's right here. Or they'll say they have my abstract and they give me a copy of their deed. The deed is going to ultimately get put of public record at the Johnson County Recorder's Office, for example, or the Lynn County Recorder's Office, or wherever the property is located. And so that is so we can all go up in a public record. That's the way you lay claim to your piece of property. I know I own my property because I have this deed. Now, what's interesting about a deed is in this day and age, and it's been this way for quite a while, once that document isn't as critical as you would think. The example I often use is, for me to buy your car, I need to get an actual title to that car, and you have that somewhere. It has to be signed over to me, and that's what shows kind of the ownership. Well, a deed is what is executed by a seller to transfer to a buyer, and once it gets recorded at the recorder's office, the original deed isn't that important. So I tell people a lot of times that as soon as it's recorded, don't worry if you lose it, okay? Because that's a public record. We can all go on the recorder's website and look up the deed and search your name and find out, yep, there's my deed when I took title of this back in September or something like that. And so that's what, there's several kinds of deeds. As a general rule, you're going to get what's called a warranty deed. And what you're saying as a buyer or as a seller is, I am warranting to you as the buyer that I have good title and I can give it to you. Now, that's great, but that's also why we do all of this. Because we want to make sure that someone else that's looked at the public record says, yes, that's actually true. But it's a fraud type thing, and it's trying to protect consumers and buyers. If I was going to buy a property from your grandmother passed away and had her house, and it's her estate that's selling, we're going to get something called a court officer deed. It just means there's an executor appointed by the court for grandma's estate that can transfer title. Sometimes you'll hear the term quit claim deed. Quit. Some people say quick claim deed, but it's a quit claim deed. Q-U-I-T.
Okay.
It's kind of a catch-all. When you buy your house, you don't want a quit claim deed, you want warranty. You want a warranty deed. So they're saying, I warrant that I have good title to you. A quit claim deed is, let's say, there's a back corner piece in your lot that no one's ever really known who owns it, but you've been getting title to it. There hasn't been a search. So a quit claim deed is something you might sign, and what that does, it says, any ownership I have in this piece of ground, I'm giving it to you. Okay? I'm not telling you that I know I own it 100%, but if I do, technically I could give you a quit claim deed to the Brooklyn Bridge, and it won't do you much good, but the nice thing about it is that's why I'm saying, if I did own anything, I'm giving it to you and I'm walking away kind of a thing. That's a quit claim deed. There's other reasons you do that. Corporate warranty deeds, company warranty deeds if it's in a corporation or if it's in a limited liability company. Lots of deeds. But that's really, the bottom line is a deed is what transfers title from one to another.
Okay, understood. So that's a lot of information. So we covered abstracts and abstracting and title opinion and deed. So Steve is always my go-to guy if I have a question about any of those topics or other topics. So Steve, if somebody does have a question, how can they get a hold of you? Where can they find you at?
We're at Hawkeye Title and Settlement, and also our law firm, Anderson Houghton. Jim Houghton and I are partners. And we're located on Highway 1 in Iowa City, 568. I always say, if you remember where Godfather's Pizza was, that's where we are across the street. Now it's Fuji Steakhouse on the corner of Miller Avenue and Highway 1. And we're at 351-8600 or HawkeyeTitle.com.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks a lot. It's good to be here.
Thanks.
Have a great day.